EB, thank you so much for being here today. If you can, I'd like you to say and spell your first and last name for us.
Absolutely. It's Elizabeth Brooks, Elizabeth Brooks, and my nickname is EB, which is just the two letters EB.
Gotcha. Tell me, where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in two different places. So I was born and raised in Fayetteville, Arkansas, on the side of Sequoia Mountain, which was an incredible place to grow up. Behind my house, we had a ton of woods, a valley with a creek running through it. We had forts back there, beautiful big garden. So it was a really kind of natural way to grow up. It was wonderful to be able to go play in the woods, and I was truly lucky to have parents who were in that generation of just don't come home until the street lights come on. Wow. Doing a tick check in my hair every night, you know, when you come back. So that was really kind of influential in my life, and just being raised on the side of this kind of, you know, rustic mountain. I mean, we were in the middle of town, but it was still, you know, kind of a wild place. So it was a great place to grow up. And then when I was 9, we moved here to Lafayette. And I lived on Test Drive, which is kind of just a dead-end street right by kind of the Popeyes that has the buffet, off of Pinhook and South College. And if you're familiar with that area, it's a great street. It ends at the river, the Vermilion.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, the potential for us to kind of have access to that waterway was really amazing. And then just to the right of it is land that has always been kind of designated for a future South College extension. So it was almost like a 100-acre park, just, you know, just for the neighborhood kids to go play in. So another great kind of backyard that really was almost unprecedented in a city for me to grow up next to these two huge green spaces that have really influenced my love of nature and really impacted how I've directed my career.
Okay. Do you have any siblings, or were you an only child?
I do have a sibling. He is 8.5 years older than me.
Okay.
He lives in Denver, and he is in technology, so he's a software developer.
Oh, gotcha. Wonderful. Whenever you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I actually thought back on this recently, and I think it's so funny. I really wanted to be a pilot. And I remember I loved flying. I loved, you know, the thrill of taking off, just that momentum and the rush you get of just the power of an airplane, you know, about to take flight. And I was devastated when my brother told me that, you know, my eyesight was too bad to become a pilot. I was like literally in tears, just, you know, it was ruining my life. But in the end, I ended up becoming an urban planner. And I think one of the interesting things kind of in hindsight is that I always loved like looking down on the ground, you know, from high up. And so 30,000-foot view is actually a term we use in urban planning all the time, because we're staring at maps where you're 10, 20, 30,000 feet up, thinking about how does a system work over the entire overlay of a city, or, you know, looking at entire neighborhoods or districts and how it all ties together. So I think it's kind of interesting that I really loved the thrill of the pilot idea, but I think also I really loved being in the air and looking down. And so I think I've really translated that into what I've kind of gone on and done with my life. So
that's great. Let's see how it worked out. So where did you go to school?
I graduated high school from ESA. Episcopal School of Acadiana, out there in Cade in the cane fields. Another natural experience, be it, you know, agrarian. Then I actually started college at Ole Miss. So I went for about 1.5 years, and I studied biology. And it was actually at that point in time when I met a friend who, you know, was just really kind of a great friend. We had a lot in common, and he was like, man, I really think you should read this book called Ishmael. So I read this book by Daniel Quinn, and it's just a simple story about a conversation between a teacher and a pupil. And it totally changed my life. I mean, it's changed millions of people's lives, so it's definitely one of those books that's on that list. But it definitely changed mine, and it made me realize instantly that I wanted to become kind of an environmental activist. And so I was in biology at Ole Miss, but I started talking to my parents, and I was like, man, I just, you know, I don't know that biology is really going to take me where I want to go now. And my dad was like, you know, we have this amazing environmental sustainability and community development program at UL. Maybe you should look into it. And he sent me the description from the kind of curriculum book, and I was like, this is my people. Like, this is where I need to be. So I did. I transferred back to UL as a sophomore. And I walked into my advisor's office, and I just basically regurgitated the book. I was like, oh my gosh, this amazing book, Ishmael, all this stuff, and like told him all about it. And he was like, I was like, you know, have you ever read this book? You should read it. And he was like, actually, that's the first book I make you read in my 101 class. And
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, I'm home, you know. So it was a really kind of great experience and very serendipitous to have happened at such an early age, because I really got on the path for my career when I was about 19, which, you know, sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes
Yes.
people know when they're kids, but
Right.
it was a good time in my life. So I studied environmental sustainability at UL and graduated in 2006, and also got a degree in Spanish.
Okay.
And then that's when all the Save the Horse Farm stuff started. So I stayed in Lafayette a little while, and then I went to graduate school in Austin at the University of Texas for urban planning and urban design.
Okay. What was your first job, and what did that teach you?
You know, my first job was a nanny. So of course, you know, babysitting, nannying, whatever. But one of the more steady nanny gigs that I had for a couple years was actually babysitting every Saturday morning from 6 a.m. until about 2 p.m. For a doctor and his wife. And I think what it taught me, besides just, you know, like, you know, managing crazy children and the value of play and just being creative and, you know, kind of imagination important, you know, or, you know, having a great imagination to keep these kids occupied. I really think, thinking about this, I really think what it taught me the most was, like, I thought it was so sweet that this husband and wife took every Saturday from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. for them. And they went and played tennis every Saturday, and then they went and had lunch, a leisurely lunch, and then they would come back and be so refreshed. And I just remember being so inspired by that, you know, they had the forethought to, like, really plan ahead to put their relationship first and carve out that time for them, because I know, you know, life gets so crazy and it gets so easy to just lose every single hour of the day with your kids. And they were like, nope, paying her $40 every Saturday is totally worth it, you know, for us to have that time.
Now, did you find that difficult as a teenager to get up that early in the morning?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, I was like 15, 16. It's not like I was going out or anything, but it was still, you know, but it also taught me time management and responsibility and all that. But I just remember loving the fact that they took that time for themselves.
Yes. I know we talked a little bit about where you are working now before you came into AOC, but tell me what your position is and where your goals are for your career.
Well, the goals, I have no idea. I guess that's where life takes me. But the existing career is I'm the executive director of Munkus Park, which is actually a nonprofit called Lafayette Central Park. So back in the days when we had saved the horse farm from commercial development to turn it into a 100-acre Central Park, we formed a nonprofit. And to keep it kind of ambiguous and to be able to kind of raise a lot of money by offering a name of the park to a donor, we named it Lafayette Central Park. So that's the official name, but now the park will be called Munkus Park.
Okay. So tell me more about the mission of Munkus Park.
So we are going to be Lafayette's first privately funded public park. Okay. So it's a nonprofit conservancy, which is a growing trend across the country, where, you know, parks and recreation departments' budgets have been cut, you know, over the years. And so having a nonprofit conservancy, either as a partner or actually as the managing operating entity, is really important, because it offers the opportunity for, you know, really important philanthropic dollars that can pay for our capital projects and also support our ongoing maintenance of parks. So Lafayette Central Park is that nonprofit, and we are building out the Central Park at the former UL Horse Farm, which is on Johnson Street, kind of between the Grand Theater and Lafayette Lanes, and across from Mel's Diner. You've been there. Some people drive by and they're like, I don't know where this is, and I'm like, it's across from Mel's Diner. They're like, oh yeah, because it's so long and narrow. I think a lot of people just pass right by it and don't even think, you know, that there's anything going on. I mean, now that construction has started, people are definitely noticing. But but it's going to be a beautiful 100-acre Central Park, just open to the public. We'll have a farmer's market pavilion, an amphitheater, beautiful open lawns and gardens, walking trails, tree houses, a dog park, all sorts of wonderful things.
So it's an animal-friendly environment?
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll have an off-leash dog park, but of course dogs are welcome on leash. You know, that's just kind of a city ordinance. So.
Love it, love it. Working for a nonprofit organization, what challenges or opportunities have you learned throughout the process of doing fundraising and, you know, raising funds, you know, through the campaign that you're working on now?
I think, especially today, I think that, you know, the connection that people can have to the nonprofits they care about or the causes they care about is so much more real because of social media, because of, you know, the way in which people are expecting their institutions to be transparent and accessible. So I think that, you know, the challenges are kind of holding up that integrity and being an authentic organization that's, you know, true about how you're spending your money and what your mission is. But I think also, as far as an employee of a nonprofit, I think a little passion goes a long way. I think people, going back to that authentic thing, I think people really can see when you're really passionate about a project and when you're authentically so, that just gets them excited about it or makes them care about that cause where maybe they didn't know much about it before. So the blending of passion from an employee standpoint to the kind of like authenticity, integrity, and transparency and accessibility from an organizational standpoint, I think is really what I've taken away from my experience with Lafayette Central Park.
Gotcha. Before we started the interview, I asked you about AOC, and I know you've been here several times for different interviews and different projects. What was your first impression of AOC?
Gosh, I mean, a long time ago, just like flipping through channels and kind of running across, you know, I think it was probably, you know, kind of like a political banter. It was a long time ago. I mean, it was probably 20 years ago or something, you know, where they were just like talking about a book that they had read and kind of what they got out of it. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. These are two people just like us off the street that can come in here and have a vision for a message they want to get out, and AOC makes that possible. And so I've always really admired that AOC has been so welcoming to so many different people who just have a vision of, you know, some message they want to get out, whatever that be, that's fine.
That's correct.
And I love it.
That's what we're here for. Let's change gears a little bit to some fun questions. And I have an idea, I think I know where some of the money would go, but if you won the lottery, what would you do with the money?
Well, I'd make a substantial contribution to Muncus Park. You know what I always think about? I always think about my student loans, and I'm like, I would tell all my friends I'd pay their student loans off, because what a burden, you know, what a relief that would be if you just were like, you know what, that couple $100 a month, you never have to worry about it again, or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the magnitude of how much you win, but maybe I would finish your house note, maybe I'd do whatever. But I feel like I don't think anybody really ever needs like $100 million of their own, and it seems like people who do end up with that much cash end up with a lot of trouble and a lot of problems.
That's right.
So I'd probably try to figure out a way to set up a foundation to like just give it away, you know, and like help people, you know, be less burdened by the typical things that we all kind of get bogged down by.
Sure, sure. I know that you work for a nonprofit organization. Are you involved with any other nonprofit organizations in the community from the past, or currently working on or plan to work on with any future nonprofits? Yeah,
so we obviously, as an urban planner, like I'm kind of involved in like city planning or, you know, kind of like community engagement programming. So I literally just rolled off the board of TRAIL, which is Transportation and Recreation Alternatives in Louisiana, which puts on not only kind of bike and running events, but also builds out alternative transportation infrastructure. So they'll finish out bike trails and stuff like that. And then I also was just chair of the Freetown, Puerto Rico Coterie, which is the neighborhood right by AOC. Just south of downtown. So just a great neighborhood planning organization that just tries to do different programs and, you know, capital improvement projects that make our neighborhood better, you know, street signs or, you know, historic preservation, or we got designation as a historic neighborhood, that kind of stuff. And then I was also, as a member of the Coterie, I was the official neighborhood designee on the I-49 connector project. So just really tried to help guide that process to make it so that, because really it's adjacent to our neighborhood, so it's a huge impact. So making sure that the outcome of whatever that becomes is, you know, as good as it can be for our neighborhood and brings as much positive to our neighborhood as it can. And then lots of like ad hoc things that are not necessarily formal nonprofits, but, you know, just supporting alternative transportation, biking, community development. I'm always willing to kind of lend a hand, and so putting on different better blocks across the city and that kind of stuff is always like a really fun kind of, you know, exercise for me. I love getting involved.
Awesome. Good. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
Well, I've always said I'd love to go to Greece, and I think I guess I just remember seeing those beautiful pictures of those kind of seaside villages with those white stucco architecture, the white stucco architecture, and then, you know, of course, who doesn't love Greek food? And then the people are always really friendly. So I don't know. I think I'd still stick with Greece. So, and I think you get a pretty good vacation for not very much money right now.
Right,
But,
exactly.
so maybe I'll still go.
Yes. Oh, speaking of vacations, what's been your favorite vacation so far?
You know, actually, it was pretty recently. Last June, I went to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, and it was, I mean, if you have not been up in mountains of that size, I mean, of course, being raised in Arkansas in the Ozarks, like I'd been around mountains, but they certainly were not like the Rockies, you know, that are just incredible. And there's a road that runs from Grand Lake to Estes Park, and it's, you know, a 2-hour drive. And you literally at some point are just on the edge of a mountain peak where, you know, you're down on both sides at the very top. And it, I mean, just the experience of that and being in awe of almost kind of the civil engineering feats that it took to be able to bring people into these rugged landscapes is really, it just really inspires me. And, you know, now granted it's, you know, it's a double-edged sword, but it's mostly a national park. But, you know, being able to drive through it and just kind of like see the beauty and get that high up in a vehicle is like, you know, kind of a special experience.
I know you mentioned that you you do like to read. What are you currently reading right now?
You know what? This day and age, I actually read a lot of leadership books and also books on fundraising.
Oh, gotcha.
So one of the books that I am kind of in the middle of is The Rockefeller Habits. So it's a great book. And I think, I don't know, everybody's kind of reading habits kind of change as their time, you know, in their career develops. And, you know, I read so much for grad school that I think my passion for reading is kind of limited. So when I do choose to pull out a book, plus I have a ton of extracurriculars and stuff. I really try to choose to focus it on professional development, personal development stuff. So
that's awesome. What about television? What are some of your favorite TV shows?
You know, I don't have like really current television, but I will tell you that I have a soft spot in my heart for Arrested Development and Modern Family. But also, you know what else I love, and this is totally probably very predictable, is like BBC shows like Planet Earth. And I mean, I could watch that all day, every day, you know, just like traveling the world with David Attenborough, you know, is kind of a dream of mine.
What about favorite movies? Do you have any, are you a fan of the classics? Are you like, you know, modern movies? What are some of your favorite movies that you like?
You know, I think some of the most inspirational movies that I have ever watched are What the Bleep Do We Know, which is really all about kind of how, I mean, interesting discoveries in science as we become more and more advanced have allowed us to understand that we have a lot more control over our intentionality and our futures than probably we imagined. So that's a really interesting and dynamic book, and also kind of how you can control like your outlook on the world. And then another one that I love is Waking Life. It's another great one, beautifully done. They took every single frame and painted over it, so it's kind of got this very ethereal, very interesting kind of visual, but it also has some really great messages, and it's just a series of conversations as this guy is kind of traveling through a dream.
Oh, gotcha. Well, in speaking of people that are, you know, inspirational and I guess influential, who would you say is someone that's been very influential in your life? And it could be more than one person.
You know, so I told you about how I went and sat down with my advisor and was like, have you heard about Ishmael? Well, that man was Dr. Griff Blakewood. So he was a professor at the university in that environmental sustainability program. And as soon as I met him, he also was kind of the faculty advisor for the environmental club on campus. So I immediately kind of not only became really good friends with him and kind of he was our mentor, but through that environmental club speak, met just a whole tribe of amazing people who have continued to, you know, jump on board on different campaigns and try to get community projects done together. And it's been an incredible experience to have this group of people that you know you can count on anytime you want to get anything done, because there's always power in numbers, right?
Right.
And so, but he in particular was really super influential, not only to me, but a lot of people. But I think what he was the best at was he could kind of relay why sustainability was important to anyone. You could come from any walk of life, any political background, anywhere you were in life. Like, he could make it relatable to you so that you understood that our relationship with the planet is so sacred and we need to honor that and be better stewards of the environment. And he was able to make that happen for anyone from anywhere at any time in their lives. And so to have that gift was really, I don't know, it was really inspirational to be around him. And he unfortunately passed away in 2014. So I know, too soon,
Sorry
but
to hear that.
so he would be it.
We're halfway through the year right now. What are you looking forward to for the rest of 2018?
Well, not to harp on work too much, but we obviously are in a big fundraising push for the park to try to finish out all the phase 1 elements. So the rest of the year hopefully is going to have a lot of fundraising success.
Yes.
But construction should finish in the early months of 2019. So that's an exciting thing because we'll be watching plants going in the ground and, you know, the finishing touches at the end of this year. So that'll be really fascinating to watch and really
Great.
exciting for the community.
Awesome. What about you in 10 years from now? Where do you see yourself?
I have no idea. You know, people ask me that, and I think I'm going to give myself a pass because, you know, what I love about my job today is just I'm totally ADD and I'm able to be really ADD and thrive, right? Because there's 64,000 things that have to do with this park that I have to manage, and for me to be able to jump tracks really quickly is really helpful. But will that continue on as a park administrator, being the executive director of an operational park that's just got, you know, all the elements that we're building? And I mean, I imagine that it will, but I think, you know, time will tell. Like, maybe I'll get in that job for, you know, 5 years and be like, you know, it's probably time to pass this on, you know, get somebody new in here, because I've been involved with the horse farm, Munkus Park, for 14 years now. So, you know, it would be, you know, 20 years at that point. So I'm giving myself a pass to not say, you know, I don't know where I'll be in 10 years, but will I still be running the park? Maybe. Will I not be? Who knows? But
Who knows? Any final thoughts, anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I don't think so. I mean, really, I have just been really inspired by our community, because I feel like in the same way that, you know, AOC plays a role, I think Munkus Park plays a role. I feel like we really have something special here. I think we feel very communal as a community. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I really feel like we have special bonds where even if we don't know each other, we know we're all in this great game together. And I feel like that is not replicated in all these different communities. And so I just look forward to seeing what Lafayette comes up with next.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Evie. That concludes our interview.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.